Hi, this is Ken Parker, welcoming you to another episode of Common Ground, the policy roundtable, where we bring together a panel with diverse views on issues of concern to Newton residents and try to hammer out our differences. For those of you who are new to the show, let's review the rules. First, I introduce a topic. Then we go around the table once with each panelist expressing a viewpoint. I then select the two panelists who disagree the most strongly and ask them to speak directly to one another in hopes of finding some area of agreement. We then bring the rest of the panel into the discussion, and at the end of the discussion, I put in my 2 cents on the topic and give an assessment of how we did at finding common ground. This is our first episode of the new year, and so I think we can all drink a toast, even if it's just water, to a happy and healthy new year for everyone. And I think this is also quite an extraordinary time we're living in, and I don't think it would be appropriate to do a show without first making some comment on the events of this past week. So before I introduce the panel, actually, let me introduce the panel first and then make a brief comment on the important events that we're living through right now, and invite my panelists to do the same if they'd like to. So first, without further ado, we have a fabulous panel. We have back on the show former City Council President, Councillor-at-Large from Ward 7, former school committee chair, and I believe probably the only person ever to serve in both of those jobs.
I think there are a couple others, but we.
Oh, really? City Council President, and school committee chair?
Yeah.
Vern Vance was the other, I think,
And
right?
Susan Albright.
Oh, Susan Albright also had. So one of an elite few who has served in both of those roles, and also a member of the legal profession. Your firm is it Laredo and Smith? Is it?
It is. We're in Boston.
And so without further ado, let me introduce my good friend Marc Laredo. Welcome, Marc.
Thanks, Ken. It's great to be here again. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. So next we have a city councilor, an environmental leader over the course of time in multiple organizations. I believe currently the Charles River Watershed Association. Prior to that, the Sierra Club of Massachusetts. My very good friend Emily Norton, also ward councilor from Ward 2. Emily, welcome back to Common Ground.
Great to be back, Ken. Thanks for inviting me.
Did I leave anything important off your resume there? I always feel like
no, those are the high points.
Those are the high points. Good. Well, got the important stuff. Excellent. And I'm very, very excited to have a first-time panelist. Very famous name, not the first person with this name that you might think of, but a new candidate for City Council at large. This is a race that anyone in the city can vote in. I believe it's at large from Ward 1. Am I correct?
Right.
And this is the seat that was tragically vacated by the death of Alan Ciccone Jr., who died too young. And the famous name that's running for it is John Oliver. But John, as I understand it, you are not the same John Oliver who has an HBO cable show.
That's true. We share the same name. We both wear glasses. I don't have an accent, and I'm nowhere near as funny. But we do share the same name.
All right, well, there you go. And on top of, but you do have some very impressive professional credentials. Let me let you tell our audience what you do for a living.
Sure. So my day job, I am a consultant. I focus on performance marketing and change management, which is a fancy way of saying that I help companies large and small identify their problems and then figure out what solutions are best suited to solve those problems and then put them in place.
And as we do for all candidates in an election year who come on our show, I want to give you a minute to tell us why the heck you want to be on the city council with these people.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think really the simplest way I can say it is I've been living here for about 18 years. And I truly believe that I have the professional background and the experience to help Newton not only realize the Newton that we want, the Newton that's in front of us, without sacrificing the Newton that brought us all here, the Newton that keeps us living here. I mean, it's a fantastic place to live that I think I can help make it incrementally better.
Okay, well, I'm sure as we get through the topics, we'll learn some of the ways that you can contribute, and I would like to make the city incrementally better. That's a bold campaign slogan, incremental improvement.
The increments can be really big at the same time.
Okay, yeah. That's like, you could go, the humble candidate. I will incrementally improve things. Anyway, the thing I just wanted to say is it's really not possible to be, especially being a lawyer in my profession, but I think an American citizen this week, and be in a public forum, and not for me not to comment that our nation, this experiment in democracy that's, that during most of our lifetimes had its 200th birthday, was I think it's fair to say at risk of death. I mean, there was an attempt, a viable attempt by the incumbent president of the United States to end the American experiment and to declare himself essentially president for life after he lost the election. And he used violent means to accomplish this. And so, invoking the worst instincts among his supporters and directing them to stop the formalizing of the vote. And I can't imagine a more existential threat to our democracy than what happened. The threat of violence and actual violence and actual death in an attempt to end American democracy. And I can just say, I don't know how we stop this from happening again. I don't know whether impeaching him will do it. I don't know whether you have to remove some of his collaborators from Congress. I don't know whether the politics are that there'll be the votes to do that. I don't know whether there are, whether people will become even more stratified if we try to remove some of these collaborators. I don't know the answers to any of these questions, but I think that this has to be among the things that all engaged citizens think about and talk about and work on in the coming years. And I don't think we can have a civic discussion without acknowledging the importance of this issue. And so my belated New Year's resolution on this is to try to make sure that every time I'm around a table, even if it's a virtual table with smart, engaged people like the ones here tonight, that I ask the question, what are we doing? What can we do? And that we at least all resolve together to try to preserve this great nation. So with that, if anybody else wants to weigh in on this, has any thoughts on it, I'm happy to put that in before we get to the local stuff.
I'll just add very quickly, Ken. I think the seeds of what we saw last week were sown years ago. And it's been the rhetoric that we've heard over the last 4 years. And by that, I do not mean disagreement over policy. Disagreement over policy is healthy, it's appropriate. Good debate, frankly, makes for better democracy. But it was the continual demeaning of people, the continual name calling, government by tweet, rather than thoughtful response and deliberation. And that kind of name calling and frankly, meanness goes a long way to harming our country. And I really hope that every single person who's ever in elected office, whether at a local level, a state level, or a national level, takes quite seriously its responsibility to make sure that they listen respectfully, they disagree vigorously, but they do so within the bounds of common, decent, acceptable behavior, and that we do not demonize people we don't agree with. We respect them, but we also respect fundamentally democracy and the rule of law in this country. And to me, that's critically important. And that's a lesson I think every one of us can take. And I take that lesson as an elected official, even at the local level, that we have a responsibility to behave responsibly, to behave like leaders. And that the tone we use, and again, I want to be careful, the tone we use can be critical. That is appropriate, but not demeaning, not derogatory, and certainly not something that does anything but respect our democratic institutions. Whether people vote for us or against us, we need to abide by that.
Thanks, Mark. That's very eloquently spoken. Emily, John, if you want to weigh in on this, feel free. Don't feel obligated to. It's not one of the advertised topics for tonight's show.
No, but it's certainly something that I'm sure we're all thinking a lot about. And as I watched what was happening, I just thought back to Waco and Timothy McVeigh. We've had this element in our country, and we will always have this element in our country, but they weren't incentivized and cheered on and collaborated with by the president and members of Congress. I mean, I was listening to Jim and Marjorie this morning, and Congressman McGovern from Massachusetts just sounded so shaken. And that he actually said he didn't know, looking around at his colleagues, if they wished him harm. Like, he worries that they were plotting to kill him. Ayanna Pressley's office reported that the panic buttons were ripped out of her office. Representative Clyburn talked about, I saw him last night talking about how these people running through the Capitol found the office he was in that wasn't marked. It was an office that he works out of, whereas they left his regular, so they had a map of the building. Who gave them that? So that's where we're at. But when I look at the president, when I look at some of these people, to me, they're like overgrown toddlers. When toddlers, as a mother of 3 boys, I guess that's how I think. If they keep pushing and pushing and you don't push back, they keep pushing and pushing. And that's when I look at the president, I just look at someone no one ever pushed back on that man. And now, the courts are starting to squeeze him, and they took his PGA championship away, and stuff, and he can't handle it. Well, maybe if people had started pushing back on him and some of these other people decades ago, we wouldn't be in this position. So I guess I blame the moms. Push back on these kids. Tell them, no, you can't have that extra thing of candy. I mean, I'm making light of this, which is not light at all, but I look at that. I mean, we could have a whole show on what I think about toxic masculinity with some of these folks. Just, there's something wrong with some psyches that we're seeing on our news screens. And yeah, it was really close what happened last week, and we don't know what's coming, and it's terrifying.
Thanks, Emily.
I think that what's really interesting in that last point is, did I read that there are actually more National Guard troops in DC than we have stationed in Afghanistan and Iraq combined? I mean, that's scary. Let's face it, I think that's a good place for them to be right now, given what could be coming right around the corner here in a few days. But at the end of the day, those scenes we saw on the television, they were surreal. And I think Mark said it really well. I think we got here over time. Over the past 4 years, we've steadily seen this lack of respect and this inability or unwillingness, frankly, to listen to each other at some of the highest offices in our country. And I think that's something that we really need to take a lesson from, frankly, in my opinion. And like Emily said, whether it's the moms that we have to go back to, or every single one of us saying, hey, look, I want you to listen to these people. They've got something to say. That's why you're in this office. We need you to listen. I come back to the simple fact that I have a lack of words for a lot of what we just saw.
Yeah. I mean, thank you, John. We're all processing this and trying to figure it out, but I think it's important that we just keep having this conversation and acknowledge the seriousness of the issue and that we have to address it. So having done that, let's turn to local issues. And as the environmental movement has said for many years, we should think globally and act locally. If the recent events in Washington are an existential threat to American democracy, we're faced with another existential threat to our planet and our environment in the form of climate change and global warming. And so my question, we've got two city councilors and one person who would like to join the city council here. I want to start with the broadest formulation of this question, which is, are we doing enough here in Newton to act locally to address climate change? And since we have a superstar of the environmental movement here, I'm going to turn to her first to give this assessment. Emily, are we doing enough?
No, we're not doing enough. No one is doing enough anywhere. You teed this up very well. We are facing an existential threat. We're seeing more storms, fires, droughts, disease, and then what's happening in other countries due to the behavior in a large part of the United States. The carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere, the greenhouse gas, most of it is from the United States. So, you'll sometimes hear people, the climate deniers or whatever, want to blame China. And yeah, other countries are contributing, but no one has contributed as much as we have. So, I mean, famine, horrible things are happening in other countries because of our behavior. So Newton can't stop all of that. Even Massachusetts can't stop all of that. But we are a pretty powerful city within Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is a pretty powerful state within the country. So to their credit, the legislature just passed a terrific climate bill that we're literally waiting hour by hour. Today's the day that is the governor's deadline to sign this bill. But here in Massachusetts, or here in Newton, we have taken steps. We haven't done enough. But for example, Newton Power Choice, many people are aware that we have a group purchasing of electricity now. And thanks to that program, it over approximately 80% of the electricity used in Newton, by residents and small businesses is generated from clean energy. And that is more than any other community in Massachusetts. And just to give a contrast, Boston just moved ahead with their own program. It's called municipal aggregation. And I think they're at 30 or 40%, like way, maybe even less, way less than we are. So we really are a lead. The next closest, I think, is Lowell. So that's one fabulous thing that we've done, but there's so much more that we need to be doing, particularly helping our residents and businesses do more when it comes to electrifying our transportation. Basically, the answer is electrify everything, because once you've electrified everything, then you can decarbonize or green up your power grid. Then we can run virtually everything on clean energy. There will never be a renewable version of gasoline, for example. So when we can have our cars running on electricity, our homes and businesses heated, such as with heat pumps, and then when we have our electricity coming from a clean power grid, that's really, that'll really get us much farther than we want to be. But, as you think about your own home or your own vehicle or whatever, we have a long way to go.
So let me drill down on that just a little bit. There's two broad categories that you as a city councilor have some authority over. One is the city government itself, including city buildings, and the other is laws that you enact that control what happens in private buildings and in private facilities. So let me just ask about both of those in turn. In terms of city buildings, are we doing enough to electrify our city buildings? Or is there more we could be doing, putting solar panels on them, getting away from fossil fuels for heating and cooling? Is there?
We are getting there. We are getting there. We still have a lot of heat that's powered by, I guess powered by gas. And that is unfortunate, but it costs money to make these conversions. So we are getting there. I believe that once I think our solar, if our solar projects aren't done, they soon will be, and we will be getting close to 50% of our electricity on the municipal side from solar energy. So that's amazing.
Solar energy generated inside of Newton?
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a cost to that. Some of the new installations are not super popular with the residents for the aesthetics. It was very controversial, the project at the library parking lot, which hasn't been built yet, obviously, but that's coming. The project on the Lowell Ave side of Newton North, I've heard from some residents. And, I get it. It's not everyone's cup of tea. My hope and my expectation is that over time, not only will we get used to how these things look, we will actually find them more attractive, because the alternative is something that we don't have to live with, but there are impacts on others. Mountaintop removal, that's where we get coal, and you destroy a mountain, you poison the water of the people who live near there. It's mercury poisoning and all the, you know, fish and waterways. So this horrible, horrible cost. Fracking is horrible cost to the people who live near those installations. So our energy choices were already having impacts
Right.
on people at a distance.
So speaking of choices, one of the things some people will say is, well, government shouldn't be taking away my choices about what I can do with my private property. And then there are other people who say that we're here together as a society, and when my choice to pollute affects your choice to breathe, and of course to go backpacking in mountains that don't have the mountaintops removed, perhaps. So the question I have is, what could Newton be doing? Let me just be real specific about it. Some folks have suggested that all special permit development in Newton be carbon neutral, be required to be all electric, be required to have solar panels. There have been some pretty substantial proposals and ideas along those lines. Right now, I don't believe we have a blanket requirement. We have there's a provision of our zoning ordinance that requires measures be taken, but it's quite vague. Is there anything we could or should be doing to require these impacts to be lessened in private development, at least in special permit development over which the city council has some control?
I'll answer really quickly and then I'll turn it over to others, obviously. So we are looking at requiring no new fossil fuels in heating for new construction or major renovation. Unfortunately, it's not clear that that is legal. Well, actually, it's clear that it's not legal under state law for us to make that imposition. So we are working on a home rule petition, which is basically a provision in state law that allows us to ask the legislature just to allow Newton to take this step. So that's one thing that we are looking at. We have, thanks to the Energy Commission, which is a group of citizens who advise the city on energy issues, and there is not a more impressive group of people in Newton, this being Newton. There's a lot of impressive people there, but very impressive group. They've put together a very ambitious climate action plan that Newton's own climate action plan that we voted on was modeled after, and full of great ideas. There is so much more. One thing that we are moving ahead on is having an energy coach. So there's literally very soon, we're in the process of hiring this person. There will be someone who can act as a resource. Because even if you want to, you know, green up your life, a lot of it is pretty technical, like a heat pump. I don't know, what does that do? How does it work? Which one do you get? So, you know, electric vehicle, what do I do? So we're going to have someone on staff available to help people. And then we have a ton of volunteers who've signed up to literally be available to chat with or to have a call with to answer some of these questions as well. So there are a lot more things we can do. We are doing some of them, and we do need support from our state legislators to do even more.
This is such an important topic that we could spend a full hour on it. And I think we will, Emily. You'll come back for our Earth Day episode, I'm sure. Yeah. You're signed up right now. Yes. Put it in the computer. But I do want to let the other panelists get in on this topic. Just briefly, are we doing a good enough job with the city buildings? Should we be doing more to mandate private development be more sensitive to its climate impacts? Mark, what do you think?
Sure. So Emily's obviously an incredibly hard act to follow when it comes to talking about environmental issues, because she's both exceptionally knowledgeable and quite passionate. I say there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is, I think in this community, there's broad support at the executive level, in the city council, and in the community for addressing climate change. I mean, I really think that in our community, people understand that it's a real and serious threat. I think there's broad commitment across the political spectrum here to address it. And that's good, because it means that we're starting from a point of really almost rare consensus in a community that this is a problem that we have to address, and we have to address now. So that's the good news. I think the challenge for us is getting there, is how we address it. We, I think, have made some really good starts. We did some extensive changes to our zoning code about a year ago to allow measures and allow construction that's more environmentally friendly as a matter of right in order to encourage that kind of behavior. We've adopted, as Emily said, Newton Power Choice, which is really a great program to help us go renewable. We have committed solar panels in a lot of different places, also a good thing. And I think the energy coach is also a very important measure because that really will help individuals on a daily basis try to change their lives. So those are all positive measures.
But Mark, to cut to the chase, are we doing enough? Are there
No,
more we could
no,
be?
the short answer is, of course, we're not doing enough. Because if we were doing enough, this would no longer be a problem. And it is a problem. It's a problem locally, it's a problem nationally, it's a problem internationally. So we have a lot more to do. The challenge for us is doing what we can within the confines of current law. As Emily said, lobbying to change our state laws in particular to allow us to require more energy efficient, climate friendly measures, and making sure what we're doing is something that our residents can do financially. I think we can't lose sight of that we need to make these measures something that they can bear economically so that the poorest among us are not facing yet another burden financially as we try to get to a greater community good. And those are our challenges. But I do think we're up to it. I think we have the commitment and we just have to keep on working at it very hard. And it's not going to be something we do in a year or 2 years, or unfortunately 3 or 4 years. This is going to be a long, multi-year commitment on the part of the city. I do think the will is there to do it, but we've got to get it done.
Thank you, Mark. John, on these two questions, are we doing enough with respect to city buildings and city infrastructure to make sure that it's electrified, as Emily called it? That sounds like a really exciting. I'm excited to be I'm electrified by that word. And are we doing enough to mandate that private sector development, at least special permit development, be environmentally sensitive and take climate impacts into account?
Yeah, and I think it's obvious that we are not doing enough, but that we are underway. I think that it was about 14, maybe 15 months ago now. I think that the Newton Power Choice option became available. We signed up here at my house. We were on the 100%. Of all of our energy is coming through that plan. And like Mark said, there was a noticeable increase in our monthly electric bill, and we have to strike a certain pace so that people are able to onboard to what the reality of these new systems really are. I don't know many people in the area who wouldn't love to have an electric vehicle in their driveway right now, but let's face it, from my perspective, I really think that the infrastructure, not in Newton, but around the entire country, needs to be able to catch up to that proposition. In meeting some of the folks at the Energy Commission myself, reading through the Climate Action Plan, which, by the way, is a very well-organized document. It's very easy to kind of get through and understand. Now, granted, like I think Emily pointed this out, some of these topics are pretty intricate, and there's math involved. But from a real perspective, I think that there are a lot more things we could be doing, and I don't want to miss the fact that, quite frankly, I think I read something the other day that Newton is still on the order of tens of thousands of trees short of where we were 20 some odd, 30 some odd years ago. That's another avenue to pursue that I know we're not really focused on right now. But in answer to your other question, in terms of new build, I've actually been poking around the idea of a heat pump here for my house. And there's also an infrastructure there. There's a reality of how efficient and so on and so forth, how ready for prime time these units are as well. And I think that as those units become more efficient, more affordable, more practical to put in our buildings, whether they be residential or municipal, I think that Newton should be able to lead in the process of adopting that kind of technology, because again, it's the infrastructure and the affordability, and it all has to work together for it to be practical.
Well, thank you very much, John. I will say that it sounds like we have common ground on this panel. All three panelists seem to have very similar views. I will say that I agree with the panel, just to put my 2 cents in on the importance of these things. I will disagree to the extent that I think that we are not doing enough, not by a little bit, but by a lot. And I think that we could move a lot faster with respect to a couple of things. While I agree with Marc that it is absolutely true, we need to be sensitive to the economic realities of folks who live in our community. I don't think that means we couldn't impose a requirement on all new special permit development that it be carbon neutral. Because when someone's seeking a special permit, that's not someone who's just continuing to live in their house as it exists now. That's someone who's building something new and is putting a lot of money in. And I think we could greatly strengthen the provision of the zoning ordinance there. I think that's a huge opportunity, which I would love to see the new city council pursue. I also think we could do, I think Emily's absolutely right that, we've made some great strides in making our buildings more energy efficient. But I think if you went to the taxpayers of the city of Newton and said, here's how much it would cost to accelerate this program. Here's our proposal for a debt exclusion to pay for things that are going to be less polluting and get away from fossil fuels. I think people in Newton would embrace that. So I think there is an opportunity to greatly accelerate the path here. And I don't think it's a philosophical discussion. I think it's something that really should happen in this upcoming 2-year term of the city council, because we do need to be the leader of other communities. It's not just if we were doing it, we would chip away, but if we're doing it, other people do follow our lead in Newton. And I think we can be that example by setting in a very aggressive timetable to get to being carbon neutral here. I certainly don't blame the counselors on the panel for our not being more aggressive. I do think that's an opportunity that probably needs to be pursued from the highest levels of municipal government. But I
don't want to cut in there, Ken. So one thing that's just important to keep in mind is a lot of this is behavior change, trying to get people to do things differently. So I do think that John's background in change management and getting companies or organizations to do things differently than they were already, and psychology and marketing, those are all super relevant when it comes to making progress in the environmental arena.
Fair enough.
Let me just add to that, Ken. I think of it in simple terms, like taking out my green and blue trash barrels every week. 30 years ago or 50 years ago, when we took out the trash, we put a big plastic bag in the front, and that was the end of it. Okay, no one thought differently. Now, as Emily said, it has become such routine that we literally automatically separate our trash, automatically put it outside, don't think twice of it. And Emily's right, that how you get people to change their behaviors over time and do it in a way where they want to do it, where it's seen as positive. And John I don't have the expertise, but John clearly does. That's really, really important, and a skill that I think will be exceptionally valuable on the council.
So the changing individual behavior will certainly be an important issue, and it will be an important issue in more than one realm. So let's move on to our next topic. You know what? I think we can't put this to the bottom of the list because it's been right at the center of the conversation. There are people who've been protesting on the steps of City Hall and in our community saying we should defund the Newton Police Department. So I want to see if we can go around the table and get as close to a yes or a no from each of the panelists, and then get into it a little more. whether that's a smart approach, whether that's the right thing to do here. So, Mark, I'll let you lead it off. Should we defund?
Sure,
the
I'm
department?
going to be crystal clear. I do not fund the concept of, do not support the concept of defund the police. And I don't support it for the same reasons that Presidents Obama and Biden don't support it. It's the wrong approach. I do support and feel strongly that we need to look at how we police in this city, in this state, and this country. And that is no different than how we review any other service that government provides. And we have to do that kind of work on a regular basis, particularly with policing, particularly with the history in our society. It is critically important that we do that carefully, that we do that thoughtfully, that we do that bringing the community into the process. And we especially listen to the voices of those who've been disenfranchised previously. But if we want change, I'm just going to finish. If we want real effective change, we need to work with our law enforcement officers to accomplish it. If it's an us versus them mentality, and I frankly think some of the defund language has been an us versus them mentality, that's a very bad way of doing it, because you discourage people, the type of people we want to go into law enforcement, we discourage them from doing that. And we make law enforcement cloistered and insular, as opposed to being representative of our community. But does that mean we can't do better? Absolutely. Should we be thinking about how we deliver mental health services in this country, this state, and this city better? Absolutely. Are there ways we can do it better? Yes.
Thank you. John, should we defund the Newton Police?
No. Oh, sorry. So I agree with Mark on the simple fact that defunding the police as a slogan, right? Slogans are easy, solutions are hard. The simple fact of the matter is, when you start off with a defund message, I think we're putting off the folks that we need to have at the table perhaps the most. If we're going to find improvements to the policing and increasing, the greater sense of safety in our community, quite frankly, I believe that Newton Police, or the NPD in general, are the core of what that solution is going to end up looking like. The simple fact of the matter also is that before that event on the 5th took place, there was an opportunity for as a community, for us to do a better job of getting some help to someone who needed it. And if we can figure out a way to put that safety net in place before a crisis happens, before anybody even is considering dialing 911, I think that we have a great opportunity to make significant strides in improving the safety of our community, including improving the outcomes certainly of that day, but also.
No, I'm just to be clear, in case our audience,
position.
in case our audience isn't aware, there was a police shooting in Newton Highlands last week, I believe it was, and I think that's what you're referring to, John.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to let Emily weigh in on this. Should we defund the Newton Police Department?
So it's going to seem like there's a little bit of disagreement between us, but in the end, I don't think there really is. I think there's a lot of common ground. There was a lot of advocacy on the city council last spring as it was time for us to vote on the individual departmental budgets and then the full city budget. And I actually did vote along with the defund the police requests, which was to slightly decrease the police budget. I did not do that out of an interest in eliminating the police department at all. I did it because the city was down $10 million in revenue due to COVID, and we were slashing our parks department and we were cutting our schools budget. And I didn't think it was appropriate that we slashed our parks budget during a pandemic when people are relying on the parks even more, that we cut the schools, but that we would increase the police budget. So I did vote to do that. Having said that, I want to agree with what my co-panelists here are saying. which is that if we want to look at how we deliver public safety services and functions, and I think that we know that we do because the City Council voted unanimously to set up a task force to look at this, we need to be doing it in partnership with the people who are currently delivering those services. And no one is going to have the insights other than as well as the people who are already doing the job. And back when there was a Newton Policeman's Ball every year, they don't hold it anymore, but I used to go every single year, and there were awards given for bravery. And there are a lot of things that our police do that do not make the cover of the tab or even the inside pages of the tab. There are all sorts of people in trouble in Newton. And when it's gone too far and it's a mental health situation like it was last week that becomes violent or potentially violent, that's it. That's who has to handle it, is our police. So on some level, I do think we are asking them to do an impossible job. So I think it's appropriate that we are looking at other ways of delivering these services. But whenever you have a situation with violence or potential violence, and anyone who listened to that 911 call, and if you haven't, I encourage it, you'll see it was an extremely difficult and dangerous situation. So I think it's appropriate that we are looking at how we deliver these services. I don't support defund in terms of eliminate the police department, but I do think if it comes down to it and there are better ways of delivering it and it means moving some money around, that's fine. I also think we should be looking at other areas of what the police do. We have police chase speeders. We will never stop speeding in Newton by having police chase them. There are too many speeders and too few officers. I have been a broken record in wanting to see more speed bumps and speed tables and traffic calming efforts like that are not ongoing, where we're paying people salary to do that, but individual. So that's just an example of something we could be doing differently that could in the end end up saving money.
We could definitely do a whole show on.
Can I just add one other? Can I add one other thing here? I think.
Well,
just quickly.
We may not have time to get to the last topic.
I'm going to be quick.
30 seconds, Mark.
I think it's really important, if you're an elected official and you're a leader in this community, that you do not rush to judgment. And particularly when there's a police shooting that goes on, absolutely, we have an obligation to have a full, fair, and thorough investigation anytime police officer uses his or her weapon, because that's a very serious thing that takes place. But I think it's incumbent upon being a leader to get your facts before you pass judgment on what transpires. And I think that's something that that's really required of leadership.
Thank you, Mark. So there's common ground here. I'm just going to very quickly add one thought to this conversation. I certainly agree with the panel that we should not defund the police. But the reason why we shouldn't defund the police is what I want to add to the conversation, which is it paints everyone with a broad brush. It says all police are bad, all police are racist, all police aren't serving the public interest. And I think what's gotten our country and a lot of our civic discourse badly off the rails is that we paint with a broad brush, if I can say that, paint with a broad brush far too often. We need to celebrate the people who are doing things well. And I think that's the vast majority of the people who work for the city of Newton, including the vast majority of our police, our firefighters, our public works employees, people who work for but there are bad apples. And I think by distinguishing between the people who are doing things right and the people who aren't, you do two things. One is you encourage people to do a better job and to be proud of their work, but you also you give them license to talk about ways to improve the operation of the department. And this gets to the point that everyone else raised, that there are things that need to change. And and fundamentally in this country, there should not be people pulled over for BWI, or DWB, driving while black. I mean, and that there is a fundamental level of injustice in this country where this people's skin color is a determining factor in the measure of justice they get. And that is wrong. We cannot stand for it. And I would say enough is enough. We all need to draw a line and say, we need to stop that now. It doesn't mean defunding the police. It means rooting out the bad apples who would apply the law in an unjust way. Let's go to the second to last topic, the penultimate topic. I want to ask the panel, there's been a lot of discussion, and this is not something we're going to be able to go into great depth on tonight, of changing our zoning laws. And it's always seemed to me to be a little bit of a moving target as to why folks want to change the zoning laws. For a while, it sounded like it was just an attempt to codify things and or make the zoning correspond to the reality on the ground. And then it seemed to be an effort to add some density. And one of the justifications I've heard on and off for the so-called zoning redesign is that it will make Newton more affordable. And I just want to ask the panel, based on what they've seen of the zoning redesign proposals, would these proposals, if enacted into law, make it more affordable to live in Newton? John, I'll let you lead this one off.
Great, thanks. I think based on the proposals that we've seen, I don't believe that the specific language being used would lead to significant increases in real affordable housing in Newton. It certainly would add density. It certainly would add an increase of demand for city services and infrastructure. I think, quite frankly, we need to get some very specific language into not only the language of the law, but we also need to focus more energy on really defining specific language in the goals and objectives that we're trying to achieve. There are phrases that are used in the objectives that I've read, things like the Newton that we want, or in the context of a neighborhood. And while those phrases are fantastic, I would like to see us be a lot more specific and even quantify what we mean by some of these phrases when we can. Because quite frankly, at some point in the future, the city council is going to be asked to vote on these proposals. They're going to be asked to vote on, the ordinances, the law. And we need to make sure that they are armed with enough information to make an informed decision to say, yes, these objectives are going to be met by these ordinances. And right now, what I've seen so far, that specificity isn't there yet.
Thank you, John. Emily, does the proposed zoning redesign make Newton more affordable?
So we don't have a final proposal to be judging one way or the other, but an early version would have eliminated single-family zoning throughout the city so that you would have been able to do a multi-unit by right anywhere, even areas of the city. I think it's about 70% of the city now. You can't do that. I live in an area where you can do a two-family by right. It's not like I think it's a big deal, but it would be a huge change. And what would we get for it? Right now, we're seeing it all over the city. A $700,000 ranch goes down and two $1.5 million townhouses or condos go up. Not more affordability. We would not, without government stepping in some way, we would not see more affordability. I am not particularly interested in falling on my sword for more exorbitant housing in Newton. We have plenty of that level. I am interested in what more we can do to provide more actually affordable housing. So that element of the zoning change that I think a lot of people were like, really, why are we doing that? It wasn't really popular. And I think there's a good reason for it, because people, I think, agree. A lot of people, at least what I hear, is that people are not, they already feel like it's too expensive. They want to see that Newton would have a place for their children to be able to move to, for people who are moderate and low income to be able to move to. And that change would not do it. Now, there are other elements of the zoning changes to make new buildings more environmentally sustainable.
And that we can talk about
to have more density near transit and so forth. And those would probably also not bring affordability, but those could bring other goals. But right now, I'm not seeing how we would get more affordability from the zoning redesign.
Thank you. Marc, you chaired the land use committee. You know a lot about the city's land use process. Would the proposed zoning redesign, and you're a lawyer, so you're a good eye for reading these things.
All right. So the short answer to your question, Ken, is no. I don't think that this zoning proposal, or really any zoning proposal, is going to make the city quote unquote affordable for lots and lots of people. And there's a simple reason for that. Okay. We live in a very desirable suburb of a desirable city, which until COVID had a very strong economy. And no matter what you do in this city, you're not going to make it quote unquote affordable. Now, could you create more different types of housing in the city? Yes, I think that's good. And I think we've been doing that. If you look at Austin Street, for example, you look at the proposed Riverside project, you look at Washington Place, they're creating apartment buildings. Until then, we did not have a lot of apartments in the city. It's good to have more diverse choices. If a senior wants to downsize, that's good. If a younger person wants to live in a smaller unit, that's good. We need different choices. That's great. But I frankly think we're kidding ourselves if we think that we're going to create affordable housing by changing the zoning code. As
Thank you,
Emily
Mark.
said, the developer, the proposal was very simple. If you're a developer and you can buy a basic house that somebody else might buy, a fairly modest house, but you're a developer and you can turn it into something else, you put the pressure on and you come in and you can outbid somebody who wants to buy that $700,000 ranch house, because you'll pay $740 and you'll pay cash with no mortgage contingency. You're going to get that. And if you rip it down and you build two larger units that frankly are nicer and cost more, you haven't done anything to add affordable housing. If we really want to add affordable housing in the city, we've got to do several things. We probably need to make the requirement for percentage of affordable housing in larger projects greater. I know we went up to 17.5%. If we went up to 25%, we would have all of those units in a large project count towards our 40B requirement. That's a huge difference, because then that would give us more affordable housing in the city. There's been a lot of resistance to that, and I think in part because the threat of 40B is actually something a developer likes. Developers like the ability to be able to say to a city, we can go around you if you don't like what we're doing. I do think we have to think much more creatively about how we as a city fund affordable housing and how we get other nonprofits to do that. I think I'm open to a lot of ideas there. With that said, I don't think we stay stagnant, but we got to be more thoughtful. And I don't think this proposal really was going to do it.
I will, I think, maybe disagree with the panel to the extent that the impression I'm getting in the consensus that this proposal wouldn't do a lot to make things better and for affordable housing, or not do a lot to make Newton more affordable. And I heard Mark saying a zoning change can't do that. I actually think that this proposal would make Newton much less affordable for two reasons. One is that it would take existing affordable units that are out there because they're old, and they're affordable because they're not new construction and they're relatively small, and it would incentivize, it would give developers more options. And I think Mark later in his comments alluded to this, to build new construction. And so you take the example of the house that was across the street from me, where they by right under the zoning tore it down and built two units, each sold for $1.7 million. That doesn't make Newton more affordable. The way to make Newton more affordable with zoning would be to allow small units. Say, here's your building envelope, and you can build as many units as you want within this envelope. Smaller units are more affordable. When Kelly and I lived in the apartments on Crystal Lake on Norwood Avenue, our rent was $750 a month for a very small apartment. Smaller units, now that apartment's probably a lot more than that today, but if you want affordability, you allow smaller units. The other problem is this proposal would allow too much by right, and the more you let developers do by right, the less they will be inclined to go through the special permit process, which would require 17% or potentially as much as 25% if Mark had his way in affordable housing. By the way, it used to be 25%, and the city lowered it. It was 25% above what you could do by right, and then it's been reduced since then. I think we should bring it back to 25% for the special permits. There are things we can do by zoning to focus our resources on those that are the neediest amongst us, rather than building more multi-million-dollar houses and making that easy, because the people we're enriching there and the people we're serving there are not the ones who are at risk of spending a night in a homeless shelter. We are, I think, getting pretty close to the end of our time, but I would like to quickly go around the table with our final topic, which is, are we doing a good job of managing our city finances now? We have obviously a pretty significant crisis with the COVID situation, but before that, and in our recovery and in addressing that, what's your rating of the city's fiscal health and our long-term strategy for addressing it? I'm not saying, you know, we obviously have a AAA bond rating, but are we on the right track? Are we doing what we can? Let me, who led off the last one? I will continue. I think Emily, you're first again.
No, make John start again.
Make John start again yet? Should we? Okay, he's the new guy. All right, John, how we doing? And it's not fair. He's not even in serving now. But all right.
Yeah, he can blame us for everything.
Okay, all
You can
right.
do that after we talk, Emily.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, Emily, you go first. Come on.
All right. In some ways we're doing things well, and in some days we're not. So
okay, you're done. Time's up. No, just
yeah,
kidding.
we have a rainy day fund. We are getting more revenue from marijuana shops. There are some other things we're doing well. We've found ways to be more efficient in some ways, but we have this $1 billion liability that's not going away, that is going to be eating more and more of our operating every single year. We negotiated
You mean post-retirement healthcare benefits? Okay.
Yeah, retiree healthcare and pension costs. We made a lot of promises and did not set aside the money to fulfill those promises. And we negotiate.
Emily, because of the time constraints, I got to let Mark weigh in if we're even
Oh, go ahead.
John.
All right, I
Short
had more to
answer
say,
is-
but okay.
Short answer is I actually think we're doing a pretty good job there. We are going to have a very difficult financial year next year and probably the year after because of some drop in revenue because of COVID and other expense we're going to face.
Mark, thank you. John, how's the city doing in terms of finances?
Yep, I think, you know, a couple of years ago, I heard for the first time, I really got involved with the city budget. When I first heard about the $1 billion liability, that was, I mean, that's a really scary number. I think it's great that we have started, we are fulfilling our commitment right now. My understanding is that commitment grows by 9.5% to 10% every year for the next 9 or 10 years. So that's kind of scary. I think that Mark, to continue on what Mark, I think where he was going in terms of COVID, I firmly believe that there still needs to be some adjusting of, as best we can, the revenue that we can generate from commercial versus residential tax streams, revenue streams in this town. I think right now, I would like to see us lean a little bit more into the commercial space, but quite frankly, who knows what that's going to look like, right? 6, 18, 24, 36 months from now. I mean, let's face it, COVID just changed everything. I'm not trying to use that as a cop-out here, but we're going to have to pay close attention to what we are able to do in terms of, in terms of balancing residential and commercial.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having your maiden voyage on a Newton Cable Talk Show on Common Ground. Thank you, all of you, for the insights on that topic. Obviously, the city's finances are something we could also dedicate an hour to, and I'd love to have you all back for that conversation. I also want to thank the wonderful people at NewTV for doing a great job running this show and everything else they do. And I want to remind our viewers that there will be this special election that you are running in, John, and that all Newton residents can vote for 2 different races on, is it March 16th?
March 16th. That's
March
right.
16th, 2 citywide races. Everybody in Newton can vote in both races since they're both at large. One's at large from Ward 1 that John's running in, and it's John Oliver, like the late night comedian guy. And then the other one is at large from Ward 2. We'll try to have some more of the candidates in these races on our February show if we can book them. I'll have to talk to our producers about that. And thank you, Emily Norton, Councillor from Ward 2, Marc Laredo, at-large Councillor from Ward 7. And thank you all at home for watching. And please, please join us again next time when we try to find just a wee bit more common ground.